Live from the Export Beer Garden studios, you're listening to the BYC, the home of all things cricket, where we dissect, scrutinise, muse over the game we all love. We're also not afraid to ask the big questions, like why on God's green earth would you schedule one-day T20 international fixtures in the notoriously moist, freezing temperatures of autumn? And if by chance we're lucky enough to get some cricket and hand out some hidings to the opposition, is that simply because the Sri Lankan players are freezing to death? Much to ponder. Afternoon, fellas, and boy, oh boy, we've got screeds of stuff to get through here. But before we do, check this out. Export have just released a new low-carb beer, Export Ultra, and it's bloody refreshing. And if you're in Auckland this weekend, you could be one of the first to try the crisp new drop. The ACC are hosting an Export Ultra pre-game party down at Shapiro's Bar before Black Caps versus Sri Lanka T20 at Eden Park. Head down to Shapiro's from 11 to 1 p.m, 2nd of April to get amongst it. Text Ultra to 3236 for all the details. G'day, boys. Dylan, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Jase.
That's good.
I'm cock-a-hoop.
You're cock-a-hoop, yes. Yeah. I thought you might be. Paul Ford, yourself?
Yeah, I'm terrific. I can't wait to hear what Dylan's cock-a-hoop about, because it certainly wasn't game 2 of the Sri Lankan series.
No.
So I can't wait to get into it.
What a debacle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I love autumn, don't get me wrong, fellas. You know, the changing of colours, the lovely crisp autumn days, but it's just not suited to cricket in my mind. It's bloody freezing out there. Sri Lanka must be hating this.
Oh, they would have been super pleased it was raining, because they didn't have to play, because not only was it raining, it was about 2 degrees.
Yeah.
I believe, and a stiff southerly.
I couldn't believe it today, Dylan Cleaver. I was freezing my balls off and up here in Auckland. 24 degrees it was. Outrageous stuff. Now, let's talk about that Canterbury versus Central Districts game, the Ford Trophy final, of course, which I had the pleasure of watching quite a bit of while I was doing the radio show yesterday. Some very interesting performances, none other than Josh Clarkson. Boy, oh boy.
He can hit a ball.
How good.
Yeah.
He got 3 foot off the top of my head in the bowling department. He's an all-rounder, 26 years of age. But his batting impressed me immensely, Dylan Cleaver, particularly the pull through mid-wicket. Just murdered the bowling. And as a bowler, when a player plays a shot like that against you, it's demoralising.
Yeah, because he came in and CD were in big trouble.
He's 70 off for 4.
Yeah, so they're chasing 213 to win. Canterbury got 212 for 9 at McLean Park. Pretty tricky conditions by the looks. CD a 4 for bugger all. He joins his skipper, Tom Bruce, at the crease and just sets about it. And I remember Scotty Stevenson saying something about a Josh Clarkson 6 in the Super Smash is the sound of summer.
Yes.
Because it just sounds so nice off his bat. And we got a little bit of that yesterday. He was fantastic. And an old friend of mine, David Cooper, used to be actually CEO of Northern Districts Cricket, I think. I may be doing him an injustice there, but I'm pretty sure he was. He asked a question on this little WhatsApp group we've got. Is Clarkson the answer to the Colin de Grandhomme gap in the New Zealand setup? And I'm an emphatic yes.
Oh, my God, Dylan, hand on heart, I emphatically agree with you. And there was something pulled forward, and I don't know if you got to see much of it. There was something of the de Grandhomme about him. And I went in my head, in my selector's head, I've got some straight swaps going on the test side. You get in my boy, Benny Lister, for Trent Bolt, and Josh Clarkson as your all-rounder. Too good, Paul Ford.
I love how fickle you are on your selections, Jase. It's magnificent. I don't remember anybody mentioning Josh Clarkson last week at all, and now he is absolutely in there. We've binned guys that have been in our team for 10 years, and I'm on board with it. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy with that. And you know, you could also argue that perhaps Clarkson there was a degree of perhaps venom at not being selected. Tied up in part of that innings, because there's a lot of guys that have been selected across the Sri Lankan and Pakistan T20 and one-day series, and his name is not there, and he must be just a little bit miffed and maybe quite pissed off, actually.
Yeah. Well, seriously, and yes, I am being very fickle, but boys, sometimes you watch a player, and I haven't seen a lot of the guy, to be really honest with you, but you see a player and they just have a factor about them. And, geez, I mean, he's 26, so he's matured a little bit, Dylan Cleaver. Boy, he looked to have the goods to me.
Yeah, and the problem is that we probably only see him in T20 Super Smash because that's really the only cricket that you can regularly watch in the domestic scene unless you're going to the ground to watch the Plunket Shield. The Ford Trophy is very hard to watch unless you got time on your hands midweek to watch 8 hours on YouTube. So we see him in the Super Smash and you get this picture of him. Yeah, he's a great Super Smash slogger, but you think that's it. You think that's his oeuvre.
Yes.
And then you watch something like that yesterday and you just go, wow, this guy can play. You're right, 26, he's coming into his peak years. Again, I might be off base here, but I don't think he is getting a run for those A teams that have been picked against Australia. I don't think they see him as probably a Red Bull cricketer. But I went through his numbers. He's just had a flat-out good season. And actually, he's been pretty good for a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, he's got 3 years at List A hundreds.
Yeah, he's only got one first-class 100, so maybe Red Bull stuff is a wee way away.
Oh, look, mate, I'm being honest with you, Dylan. If I'm in the selector's chair, I'm pulling the trigger on this one.
Which you could be very soon.
I'm pulling the trigger on this one. Now, 5 greatest moments in Central District's history. I can only imagine that this has been entered by 1D Cleaver. I mean, I don't imagine that you're going to wax lyrical about CD Paul Ford. It feels like a Dylan Cleaver setup to me.
Hopefully one of them's to do with Scott Briasco and maybe Mark Douglas. I remember they're 2 of my favourite Central Districts cricketers. But, yeah, this is a very difficult topic, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Look, I gave you all homework.
Get on with it, Cleaver. Get on with it.
I gave you all homework.
I didn't see my homework.
5 greatest moments in CD history. That was just a collective. This has got to be right up there. But, I think they...
Is this like the Māori Wars and all of that as well, or are we actually talking about cricket?
No, I'm just talking about cricket here. There was meant to be a poem, an ode to Jock Edwards by Jason Hoyte. I'm pretty sure that's not going to arrive.
No.
The 39 unluckiest CD players never to play for New Zealand.
Oh, God, that sounds enthralling.
Scott Briasco's leading that. I guess to spare you.
Douglas, maybe.
To spare you, we'll filter these through over the next 3 to 4 years, but we'll just start with Scott Briasco. And from Mapua to Mokau, 5 places to visit in the Central regions.
Oh, God.
Can we at least make that 5 great cricket grounds or something? Like this isn't a Tourism New Zealand podcast.
Yes,
and
true.
Thank God it isn't, because that would not be a topic of that either.
Okay, Saxton Oval's definitely one. Pukekura Park's definitely another. Oh, we're getting thin now. We're a Roa Domain in the Vin. That's a nice little ground.
What about, is there one in Pārtea? There must be a nice seaside kind of one.
There's one out of Napier, actually. Clifton, I think they call it. Clifton Creek.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. That's a great spot. Yep.
Yeah.
On board with that.
And Olney Park, Palmerston North. That'll do.
Okay, are we going to... do you want to break down... down CD season stats, please, Paul Ford?
Yes, Jason, I think you'll enjoy this.
Good stuff.
Jason, I think you will enjoy this. So just breaking down a few statistics. I had a look at the 11 players that played in the Central Districts team in this final. I'll just run through those guys for you. Bevan Small from Fielding, Jaden Lennox from Napier, D. Cleaver from Palmerston North, and then Jack Boyle, Christchurch, Doug Bracewell, Tauranga, Ajaz Patel, Mumbai, Ray Toole, South Africa, Josh Clarkson, Christchurch, Ben Smith, Hamilton, Brad Schmullian, Cape Town, Tom Bruce, Tika Whitty, Plata VND. This is not Central Districts. This is the rest of the world 11.
Totally underachieving until they're brought into the warm embrace of the
Central
regions.
Are you steamed, Cleaver, or something? You've been on the piss, mate.
No, I think Josh Clarkson actually went to Central when he was pretty young. He was definitely a CD under 17 and under 19 player. So I think we can claim him off the Village of the Damned.
Look.
But definitely Boyle only just arrived from Christchurch.
Truly, though, on that front, I was massively impressed by him. Boy, oh boy. In fact, it put me off my radio show. I was so transfixed by his power. And I haven't written a no to Jock Edwards because I've only just seen that, to be honest. Moving on.
I was just going to say, before you do move on, Jase, I was going to say, joking aside, it was a terrific performance.
It was.
Bloody good for that region to have the game, even though it clashed with the one day. Conveniently, the one day I wasn't on. Mad scheduling, but whatever. And, I do think it's great that the team got it done. I mean, they must have some of those guys, and we know Tickner's been in the news for it, but some of those guys would have had some pretty terrible things to deal with on the home front. So well done, CD, all joking aside.
Yeah, fair cop there, mate, actually. And to be honest with you, any team that wins any competition against Canterbury, I'm happy about.
And they have a chance to overtake. It's an outside chance, but they actually have a chance to overtake Canterbury in the Plunket Shield because they have a game spare because of all the kerfuffle around Auckland's availability with ground. So I think their final match is against Auckland at Saxton Oval, Nelson maybe. And if they win that outright and get, I think, 3 bonus points, they could overtake Canterbury, and that would be another great day in New Zealand cricket history.
What they need to do in that regard is promote Josh Clarkson to opening the bowling and the batting. That's what I'd do as a selector, Paul Ford. Hey, let's talk about international cricket.
Into the ground. Yeah,
crazy stuff going on, given the time frames and so forth. New Zealand a convincing victory over Sri Lanka, who were frankly piss poor.
Oh, they were awful.
It was just terrible stuff. Shipley, there you go, Paul Ford. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Greendale's finest. He was very, very good and got a lot of bounce out of that Eden Park pitch. And to be fair, he wasn't alone on that front. I think even Daryl Mitchell was getting bounce out of that pitch. So, good to see the big fella get out there. Some family ties, of course. His father, James, is the second cousin, I think, of Burton Shipley, who was married to Jenny Shipley. He's actually got the middle name Burton, and his uncle was Mark Priest, the feisty, fiery redhead off spinner from Canterbury. So yeah, some good family genes, and yeah, I thought that he bowled brilliantly. A couple of those deliveries to get Shanaka and Sanka, they were sensational deliveries, and Sri Lanka were absolutely dreadful, and it couldn't be summed up better than by that debacle of a run out, coming back for the third. Holding hands at the either end in a Cleaver Hoyte-esque reminiscing memory for me. Terrible. 76 all out. I mean, what else can you say? They were hopeless.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Shipley there because I've had a controversial history with the Shipley family. There was rumours swirling about that Jenny and I were lovers for a while, but I just want to quash those right now. I was her press secretary. That's as far as it went, all right? Okay. There was no intimacy.
Love.
Now, listen.
I can scratch that question off my little sheet.
Listen, watching that New Zealand batting performance was frustrating, but I always actually, and once again, hand on heart and genuinely felt it was going to be tricky for the Sri Lankans, and they just self-destructed, Dylan.
Yeah, they did. And, yeah, like you, I was a bit frustrated watching the New Zealanders bat. I was thinking, it kind of stop-start.
Yes.
The guys got starts. Fennellan got the half century. He's probably very lucky not to be bowled very early. The ball clipped the stump of the bails, which we'll talk about soon.
That was a peach, wasn't it? Absolute peach.
Didn't come off. Shipley as well was interesting because I watched him when he made his debut over in the subcontinent, and I have to say I wasn't that impressed, and I wondered what the selectors were seeing that I wasn't. And even the first 2 balls at Eden Park, I still thought, he looks a little constipated here when he runs in, but it was about halfway through his first over he started to get more, well I thought anyway, more fluid, more confident, and by the end of it was like, wow, this kid can bowl. He's got the tools. He's what, 6 foot?
He's a big unit.
7, yeah, which must be close to 2 meters in new money.
198.
Yeah, okay, 198, and he's got bounce. He's got enough pace, so that's another really nice depth piece. And in fact, I mean, you don't want to be unkind about it, but I was looking at Shipley bowl at Eden Park and then kind of comparing it to watching Kugelheim and Tickner go about their work at the Bay Oval, and I thought, maybe there are better options out there for those depth pieces for the test match attack as well. So, yeah, he was really good. Rachin Ravindra batted really sensibly. I guess the only shame of it really was that Sri Lanka was so awful. They batted so dreadfully that didn't need to use a spinner.
Waiting!
I mean, it wasn't conditions for spinners, but we didn't see Ish, we didn't see Rachin. It was just the only pity was that New Zealand record for, I think it was 73 against Sri Lanka themselves. The lowest one-day international score in New Zealand was under threat, but just couldn't quite make it happen.
If I was a selector, Paul Ford, what I'd do is I'd do a straight swap for Shipley over Kugelheim in the Test squad. But that's just what I'm saying, mate. I'm just putting it out there. What were your thoughts on the game overall?
Yeah, look, it just felt like a massive mismatch, and it was men versus boys, and it was a frustrating stop-start innings from New Zealand with those. I mean, even Finn Allen, he looked good early, then bad, and then slogged at the end and got out. I thought Rachin Ravindra's innings was a mature one, and it was really good to see actually, because it showed what a good player he is. And I mean, obviously one swallow doesn't make a summer and all of that stuff, but I think that's what he can bring to that lower order. He's not like a massive power hitter. Yeah, he can hit fours and the odd six here and there. That's not really his game. But if he can hold and build partnerships with the middle and lower order, I think he's a good man for the job. But I'm not going to argue with you about the Scott Kugelheim situation. I'd pretty much pick anyone ahead of him.
Interestingly enough, we spoke to Michael Bracewell on our show, and the Beast, and we were talking about what did they get up to, anything with the Sri Lankans after the second Test match, and he really gave quite seriously the vibe that the Sri Lankans weren't happy, and so I think the teams went in their separate directions, and maybe you combine that with the going into the shorter format, the weather's not tickety boo, and so then maybe they're just going, God, there's an element of what are we doing here? And on that front, yes, Paul.
Oh, I was going to say that, and the weird thing about that, Jase, just quickly, is that they were in a must-win situation.
Yes.
So to qualify for that tournament, they have to win. So not only did they lose, they also got docked, I think I saw, for a slow over 8.
Yeah.
So they're dicking around and losing. I mean, just a hot mess on all fronts.
And that's not a particularly strong New Zealand side.
No.
No Williamson, no Southey, no Bolt.
Yeah.
No Bracewell.
Conway.
Yeah.
Santner wasn't there. I mean, this was a team that, when you are in that must-win situation, I expected a hell of a lot more from them. And they didn't even show up in Christchurch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Christchurch, what a debacle. And I think that we actually mentioned this in the last podcast, actually, fellas, the timing of these particular games. I don't know what the weather forecast is for Hamilton on Friday, but I'm picking... Oh, yes, Paul, what?
It's pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Mostly fine, a little bit of cloud. So I reckon we're good to go on Friday.
Okay. Are you one of those punishing weather people as well, are you?
No, I just saw that someone wanted to know what the weather was, so I looked it up. And
right, okay.
I love Hamilton almost as much as Dylan likes Central District, so it's the top of my weather app.
True story. Di Henwood has got not one, but 2 subscription paid for weather
Yes,
apps.
I know. Yeah. So is Jerry. Jerry just... absolutely crazy. What WTF, Dylan, with those zinger balls?
Bales,
sorry.
Yeah, the zinger bales. What the hell was happening with them? There was one clear, obviously, Finn Allen, who, as we'll mention later, never gets called just Finn or Allen. He was bowled, but there was a really weird situation where a Sri Lanka batter was clearly run out, like the stump was broken. Karunaratne. It was the stump was tilting more than the leaning tower of Pisa, not pizza, and because the zinger bail hadn't lit up, the third umpire said not out, no dice.
Yeah,
I mean it was absolutely crazy, and then they technicians were coming out. They were swapping. It was like kids cricket at one point. They were taking the bails from one end and using them at the other. It was not becoming for an international match.
That is a ridiculous rule, though, that if you cannot use common sense to see that it's out, like That's when cricket's just getting in the way of itself. And I know Chris Brown, I'm not suggesting he thought it was, he was obviously just applying the rules, but it's a bloody stupid rule.
Hey, really good point, by the way, Dylan. It's always Finn Allen, isn't it? It's never Allen. You never say Allen. It's always Finn Allen. Whereas everyone else is Henry and, you know what I mean? Southey. Good point, mate.
Wow.
God,
I've stolen.
This is why you're in this podcast, for that kind of insight. Hey, the New Zealand Cricket Awards, the big winners, Amelia Kerr and Daryl Mitchell. Any surprises there, fellas?
No, although I thought that maybe Williamson, given his deeds over the last month, might have come home with a rails run, but it did go to the right person. I mean, Daryl Mitchell's tour of England, even though it was an unsuccessful tour from an overall team's perspective, it was historic. I thought he, Blundell, Williamson were the only three that had a chance, and I believe it went to the right person.
Paul?
Oh, that's good to hear. I thought Dylan was going to say that he thought Josh Clarkson should have got Test Player of the Year or something, but that's good that he didn't.
If I was a selector, and on that panel, Josh Clarkson would have been the Player of the Year for me.
It would have saved a lot of seats and a lot of dicking around. Just give them all the awards, men's and women's, the whole lot. My two highlights, one surprise, which was that the Bert Sutcliffe Medal for Outstanding Service to Cricket, was Martin Snedden giving it to his old Players Association adversary, Heath Mills. I did text Heath, and we had a conversation behind the scenes about that, but absolutely brilliant. And I thought, Heath has done a hell of a lot of amazing stuff. He's a top man, Heath Mills, and I was really surprised that New Zealand Cricket gave that award, but kudos to them for valiantly giving it to Heath. I thought that was awesome. And my funniest part was when Katie Martin was literally interviewing Tom Blundell and called him to his face and said, "Congratulations, Devon Conway." It was very funny, and she was squirming, but they had to go to an ad break and off they went. It would have been priceless to be in the room, I think.
Very much so. Now, in other international cricket news, South Africa versus the West Indies, a lot of runs in the T20 series there, with the Windies taking it out 2-1.
First ever series victory for the Windies in any format, I believe, in South Africa.
Yes.
And you're kind of understating it when you say a lot of runs there.
Yeah, I mean
those final two matches, that could be ODIs. 259 for 4 beats 258 for 5, and 220 for 8 beats 213 for 6. That's
a smash fest.
That is a smash fest.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't see any of it, Paul.
Yeah, I saw a few highlights, and man, there's a lot of highlights. I think it was the highlights. It might have been the entire game. It was pretty crazy. I mean, even overnight, Reza Hendricks got 83 off 44 balls, and they mowed down. Yeah, to say that 221. Yeah, it's just been crazy over there. Absolutely nuts. 26 off the last over off Kagiso Rabada. So yeah, they're not going too bad.
Great stuff. Amelia Kerr wins the WPL.
Yep, and I think I got it. Mumbai Indians beat the Delhi Capitals in the final. Two best teams by a mile. Meg Lanning's Capitals up against Amelia Kerr's Mumbai Indians. She played really well in the final, bowled very well, tidily, and was not out with Nat Siva-Brunt, who was the star of the final and of the match. But that's it's a huge moment for women's cricket. It was really, the tournament seemed to get a lot of traction, a lot of coverage in India, which bodes well for the future. There will probably be an expansion, I'd say, beyond I think it was 5 or 6 teams this time, probably hoping to get it up towards 8, a bit more money in there. And it's really important that New Zealand, and I've said this before and I'll keep banging this drum, they need more than a couple of players there. They need more than Sophie Devine and Melly Kerr flying the flag.
Great. Yeah, well, they were the two standouts from the New Zealand perspective.
And thankfully, they both played really well.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Waiting! And speaking of which, the IPL begins soon, and we ask the question, has Steve Smith suffered a head injury?
Namaste, India. I've got some exciting news for you. I'm joining IPL 2023. Yes, that's right. I'm joining an exceptional and passionate team in India.
Well, it's actually It's great stuff, by the way. Funny because I don't know about you fellas, but I was looking at Steve Smith in that clip. He looked like someone that had just taken a massive acid trip. He was wide-eyed. There was something going on there, Paul Ford. God, he's a weird dude, isn't he?
He's so weird. I mean, he gets called Bubble Boy, and things like that just don't help. He's badly advised, and I don't know. He just needs some truth cannons in his life, I think. It's just very, very strange and creepy, frankly.
Yeah, it is creepy. Yes, creepy's a good way of describing it, actually. Serial killerish.
Being really good at batting can cover up a lot of character flaws, but not all of them.
Yes, indeed. Hey, but right now, it's time for the ever-popular Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
Yeah, and I controversially awarded the Oi Hoi Trophy to Jason Hoyte because I thought his answer was closer last week.
Thank you.
Sort of a new rule that I've come up with. So there'll be no correspondence entered into on that. 3 stories this week. There was something wrong with one of them. You tell me what it is. First one's a yarn from Ben Strang. I think Devon Conway was Ben Strang's best man at his wedding. I'm pretty sure I remember. Anyway, a perfect over in cricket is almost unheard of. A holy grail bowlers don't even think about searching for. So it's so unlikely to happen. And yet Palmerston North Boys High School first 11 bowler Matt Rowe achieved that feat, taking 6 wickets in the 5th over against Rotorua Boys High School yesterday. The Year 13 student, who is in camp into the New Zealand Under-19 side camp, entered with 9 for 12 from 6 overs, and it was the 5th over in which a wicket fell for every ball. I liked it when he got interviewed afterwards. He just decided to go out and do some pole hunting. Didn't quite get the 10 out of 10 wickets because the 10th wicket fell to a run out. He said it was good for the boys to get something. So, maybe a name to keep an eye out for. Number 2, Afghanistan has displayed another impressive run chase to beat the new look Pakistan, or what you might call a weakened Pakistan, by 7 wickets in the second T20 international with 1 ball remaining. And Afghanistan have taken an unassailable 2-0 lead in that 3-match series. Sunday's win at Sharjah in the UAE is the first time that they have won a series against a top 6 ranked ICC team. It's a great honour and pleasure to lead this wonderful team, Afghanistan captain Rashid Khan said like some high priest. Great effort with the ball, and then we took it deep and finished it. So, amazing. Afghanistan, they are surging. And number 3, pugnacious Victorian opener Marcus Harris had a war of words with his ex-teammates as tea was called on the opening day of the Sheffield Shield final, and 21-year-old Ashley Chandrasinghe appeared almost oblivious to the escalating tension around him. Sporting a blank expression, he walked right past the warring and into Victoria's dressing room as if he was in a trance. Sounds a bit like Steve Smith. His robotic demeanour made sense after Chandrasinghe garnered worldwide attention for his remarkable innings of 46 off 380 balls to carry his bat in Victoria's underwhelming first innings. He batted the entire day 1 at a snail's pace, even though they needed bonus points. Just didn't seem to get the memo and was completely mocked by the crowd every time he scored, which was obviously not very often. It's a bit of a weird one in Sheffield.
There's a real Hoyte innings, that one.
So what was the argument of what was Marcus Harris going off about?
Well, I think they were just getting annoyed about what the hell was going on, because I think the other team was sort of saying, why is this guy not getting on with it? And what they were saying was, well, because we're not batting very well, we need someone to dig in. And wickets were tumbling all around him. It's chaotic. Okay. So, yeah.
You can go first if you want, Jason.
I was first last week.
Yeah, but I know the answer.
Well, that's okay.
It was extremely slow innings from Ashley, but it wasn't quite that slow. It was 280 balls, not 380. I've looked at the scorecard. I know I'm right.
Well, what do I do in this situation?
You just give up.
Just fall on your sword.
Well, I was going to say the same thing, Paul. I mean, you've put me in a real dilemma here.
No, I'm taking it to 9 for 12.
I'm going to have to, for the sake of good spirit in the BYC team, fall on my sword, knowing that I'm wrong, even though that's what I was going to choose. So, all right, I'll say it wasn't the 5th. It was the first story. It wasn't the 5th over. It was another 6th or 7th over.
get the trophy off your West Auckland mantelpiece, and it's heading back to the North Shore with Dylan Cleaver, I'm afraid. That is bang on, DC. Well played, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, he was all fired up for that, wasn't he? Goodness gracious.
Little face light up when I said it. Yeah.
I was well on top of 2 of those 3 stories. So if it was anything to do with Afghanistan, Pakistan, I was going to struggle. But
Jase, that might be a tip in there for you, is maybe to keep an eye on some cricket coverage during the week. Just a thought.
I do, but yeah, it just goes in one ear and out the other, mate. Right, now it's time for Jase's commentary, Nook. And, you know, we often talk about the sound of summer, don't we, fellas? That cricket is the sound of summer. And I've got this beautiful little clip here, and it's of the great Nathan Astor's innings against England at Christchurch, where he scored his magnificent double 100. But what I want the listeners to take note of is just the sound of the ball coming off the bat. It is truly magnificent.
Right in front of his home crowd and family. There he goes again.
That's huge. That's on the roof. That is miles up there.
It's left the stadium. Andrew Caddick, brand new ball, has just been put out of Jade Stadium. I've never seen anything like this in my life. The cameraman must be absolutely going giddy trying to follow this.
Interesting that nobody is back in the mid-off area. England with a more orthodox field. And so Astor's just going to advance and just nail anything. 6 more. Oh.
Well, the sound of this is shotgun stuff. Charging. Hussain has left it open. Astor says, I'll just have it. Top of the bounce. Momentum into the stroke. That is... What is that? In 83, 84.
Oh, hello! What a shot! Into the combox! A massive blow! 3 sixes in a row by Nathan Astor off Andrew Caddick, England's premier strike bowler. This is the most extraordinary display of hitting of a cricket ball that I think I've ever seen.
That the world has ever seen. This has climbed over where we sit, over the commentary box. Nothing wrong with the delivery. It is just the most pure, perfect exhibition of hitting of all time.
Well, there you go, eh? That's the sort of...
Very Josh Clarkson-esque.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? That's what it sounds like when I get my game going. Just a crack, like a rifle crack, fellas. But right now it's time for Paul Ford's Violence Corner.
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
Former Zimbabwean cricketer Murray Goodwin will find out his punishment after making contact with an opposition wicketkeeper with his bat. During a country grand final at the weekend, he will front a tribunal on Thursday. Goodwin wafted his bat and made contact with Marist keeper Cam Mara after being dismissed caught and bowled on day 1 of the Bunbury and Districts Cricket Association Grand Final. The ex-Zimbabwe international was charged with a level 4 offence under the MCC rule of not physically assaulting a player or another person, which is a 3-year ban. He played 19 tests and could be suspended from action until the end of the 25-26 season, which is amazing when you think he's still playing senior cricket. He's 50 years old, this guy. He scored 23,723 first-class runs in West Australia, Sussex, Glamorgan and Zimbabwe over the last 20-odd years. Pretty extraordinary and, not very happy at being dismissed, caught and bowled. I can understand him. I don't know why he didn't clatter him and like really knock him out and give him a good beating, but instead it was just a tap on the back of the head.
You must have wondered what that Bunbury keeper said to him.
Well, he yelled kind of in his face as he walked off, just sort of accidentally ran into his walking back to the pavilion line, and obviously said something that provoked a cover drive.
Australia.
Hey, now fellas, in terms of the correspondence, we've been absolutely absolutely inundated with correspondence. And I'm going to run with, if you don't mind, Daniel, who writes, fellas, some intel here for you I'd be keen to get your take on. Songs that New Zealand cricketers chose to walk out to in the 2000s. A few bangers and some absolute pies. Is this the reason this era was so tough on our lads? And let's go through some of these. Stephen Fleming, Blue.
Oh, that's terrible. That's that one that goes bada-bee, bada-boo, bada-bee.
Yes.
Dreadful. Cross.
Awful.
Big cross.
Astle, Mambo number 5.
Dreadful. Big cross.
Simon Dool, Fly Away, Lenny Kravitz.
Decent.
I'm sorry, I just can't do Lenny Kravitz as a musician. Too much, man.
Really?
Is it a Green Day vibe for you?
Yeah, he's hot. Whatever. Hate his music.
White fur coat.
Matt Horn, Horny as Funk by Soapy. Spearman, Just Another Saturday Night. Cat Stevens.
Who walks out to Cat freaking Stevens
I don't
in
know.
the 2000s?
It's not very inspiring, is it? Roger Two's Braveheart, Guilt of a Thistle.
Oh, is that the lilting music?
Yeah, God.
Terrible.
Macmillan, Miami by Will Smith. Stead, The Boxer. Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, that's almost as bad as Cat Stevens.
Parents, aren't they?
Adam Perori, Here We Go, The Chemical Brothers. All right.
I think that's Hey Boy, Hey Girl, isn't it?
That's not a bad tune. Ken, Sweet Caroline.
Oh, cliche.
Neil Diamond.
Such a cliche.
My dad
Dreadful.
listened to Neil Diamond. Chris Harris, Eye of the Tiger, hate that song. Dion Nash, Scar Tissue, I'm over the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Daniel Vittori, People of the Sun, Rage Against the Machine.
Probably the only Rage Against the
Yeah, but
Machine
don't
one
mind a
you
bit of
could pick.
rage. Jeff Alec, Kung Fu Fighting.
Kung Fu Fighting.
Oh, dearie me.
Just one of the worst songs ever written.
Abomination. Wiseman, Walking on the Sun, Smash Mouth, hate Smash Mouth.
Should have actually been dropped for picking that song. That is awful.
Song 2, Blur. Yeah,
It's all right.
that was O'Connor. Drum, Chris Drum. I don't even remember Chris Drum.
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
Right, quick bowler.
Non-drinking bus driver. Yep.
He didn't play. He probably could have played more, but he chose to retire because he wanted to pursue academics, I think, or something like
Right.
that. But he was quite a good player.
Yep.
But he
Do you
certainly he picked Ozrock, Hunters and Collectors.
Yeah, oh, that's okay. I don't mind that song. Do you see what I see?
You can't
Do
pick it
you
as
see
in,
what I see?
you cannot pick Ozrock as a New Zealander.
Scott Styrus, O Fortuna,
Stole it off the Crusaders.
and Andrew Penn, Painted in Black, The Rolling Stones.
I remember back when this was going on. I think this was 99, and there is a playlist called Bats Out of Hell that you can actually listen to all these songs if you want to prove Jase's reviews. But I remember talking to Daniel Vittori, and I'm pretty sure that the alpha male players in this team, and we don't need to name and shame them, but maybe Dion Nash, they got together and they decided the songs that people would walk out to, I think is actually how this worked. And there were quite a lot of vetoes that were issued. I'm very surprised Daniel Vittori didn't go out to Cypress Hill, for example. But yeah, I think there was a little bit of, what would you call it? Sort of manipulation. Of
Coercion.
this playlist, perhaps.
Yeah.
Bullying, maybe?
Listen, Paul, if people do want to get in contact with us, what do they do, mate?
Flick us an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz or slide into the DMs of the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade on Facebook or Instagram. And yep, Josh and Simo, we did get your messages and we will be touching on those over the coming weeks.
Yes, totally. Hey, now this is exciting. It's time for
TAB Good Punt. Good Punt. Good Punt. Good Punt.
We have a new segment called TAB Good Punt. Each week we will put on a $100 bonus bet, and this week we are going with Daryl Mitchell, top run scorer, paying $4.50. So we will look forward to seeing how we go next week.
And so is that for the third ODI, is it?
I'm imagining so, yes. Which is great stuff. Hey, what's going on with the bounce, Dylan Cleaver?
Bounce is on a little bit of a hiatus.
You were on a hiatus last week.
No, well, it's the same hiatus.
No, how long do you have your hiatuses for?
Till the end of this week. So Bounce will be making its long-awaited, desperately awaited by some people, come back on Friday.
Great stuff, mate. Great stuff. Hey, well, listen, thanks for taking the time to listen to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us. 5 stars, thanks very much. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, we'll see you later.